The mirrored towers of Stratwell Capital gleamed under the early Chicago sun as I ran one final diagnostic on their core network. In just 30 days, this very building would become ground zero for the most embarrassing cybersecurity breach in the history of American finance. But today, it was just another Monday, and I was just the IT guy about to get fired. My name is Eli Navarro, 42 years old, and for the past 5 years, I'd been trying to convince Stratwell that their shiny new security system had a fatal flaw. They'd finally had enough of my disruptive behavior. "Mr. Navarro," a voice chirped from the entrance to my cubicle. It was Rachel from HR, clipboard in hand. "Mr. Langston would like to see you upstairs." I nodded, masking my frustration. 5 years of detailed reports, flagged logs, and formal warnings, ignored. All because I wasn't in a tailored suit or speaking at tech conferences. Just tech support. As I rode the elevator to the 47th floor, the rest of the IT staff avoided eye contact. Except Mason, my colleague in cybersecurity, who gave me a small nod. He knew. We both did. CEO Alan Langston's office was straight out of a tech CEO's dream. Glass walls, steel finishes, panoramic skyline view, and not a speck of warmth. He sat behind a massive desk, flanked by Dominic Rains, their newly hired chief security officer. Dominic had been poached from some Silicon Valley firm with a reputation louder than his credentials. "Navarro," Langston said, not bothering to look up, "let's keep this short." I stayed calm. "This is about my latest risk report." Langston sighed. "It's about your persistent interference, your unfounded concerns. Mr. Rains has assured us that the new Fortress OS platform is airtight, impenetrable." The word almost made me laugh out loud. They hadn't read my logs. If they had, they'd know there's no such thing. "With all due respect," I began, "the flaw I've identified in Fortress OS's core access protocol—" "There is no flaw," Rains interrupted, smoothing his designer tie. "I built that system from the ground up. It's the most advanced platform available." And that was the problem. He built it for press releases, not protection. Flash over function. Langston leaned back. "What concerns us more is your recent outreach to federal regulators. We can't have lower-level tech staff initiating panic over theoretical threats. That kind of behavior puts this company at risk." There it was. I'd gone over their heads. Tried to warn someone? Anyone? Before it was too late. "We're terminating your employment effective immediately," Langston said, sliding a thick envelope across the table. I glanced at the severance agreement. It was generous, a golden gag order. "And your reports?" I asked. Rains smiled coolly. "They'll be archived appropriately. Not that anyone will be referencing the alarmist claims of an IT technician." I didn't argue. I signed. Let them think they'd won. As I turned to leave, Langston added, "You understand, Eli, this isn't personal. In cybersecurity, we need experts, not hobbyists playing with code." I stopped, looked him in the eye. "You're right," I said. "It's not personal. It's professional." He scoffed. "You're a support guy who thinks he's a cybersecurity genius." I smiled. "And in 30 days, when Fortress OS goes live, you'll see what a real vulnerability looks like." Security waited by the elevator to escort me out. Standard procedure. But they didn't realize I'd already secured everything that mattered. Screenshots, logs, backups. External validation. They didn't read the data. But I did. And soon the entire industry would too. Somewhere safe, where they couldn't intercept it, I stored the final encrypted file. In the lobby, Mason was waiting. He handed me a plain envelope with a card from our old team. No words, just signatures. "It's done," he said quietly. "Just like we expected," I replied, keeping my voice low. "You still have access to the test logs?" He nodded. "Everything's in place." The Banking Commission's Cybersecurity Division started reviewing the metadata from our earlier reports. "They're concerned," he said, face grim. "They should be." I turned to glance one last time at the shimmering tower of Stratwell Capital, the place I'd called my professional home for 5 years. I had fought for this company. I had tried everything short of setting off alarms to get them to listen. How long until they see it? I asked. The first signs should show up in next week's stress test, by day 30. He didn't need to finish. I had given them everything: penetration tests, risk assessments, direct analysis of Fortress OS's core vulnerability, but they were too deep in press releases and media campaigns to stop, too busy calling it revolutionary to realize it was broken. Keep me posted, I said, heading for my car. And Mason, be careful, they'll be watching everyone connected to this. He gave me a tight smile. I learned from you, remember? Hide the truth in plain sight. Back home, I opened my laptop and got to work. One report was for the Federal Banking Commission, detailing how Fortress OS exposed customer data under certain network load conditions. Another was for the FBI's Cybercrime Division, outlining how international criminal networks could exploit the architecture to create undetectable backdoors. And the third, labeled Urgent National Impact, was addressed to Rachel Wong, senior analyst at the NSA, who'd offered me a quiet job 6 months ago. She must have known I'd need a way out. As I encrypted the last document, my phone buzzed. Rains, of course. No hard feelings about today. Your dedication to security was admirable, if a bit overzealous. Perhaps a help desk position would have suited you better. I stared at the screen, then typed back. No hard feelings, good luck with the launch. They thought they were silencing a whistleblower. In reality, they'd just set me free. Now I was no longer a rogue employee. I was a cybersecurity expert with documented proof of corporate negligence and a growing list of government contacts who wanted answers. I opened a new terminal window. iPhone, Fortress OS, Anatomy of a Security Catastrophe. Sometimes the best revenge isn't a confrontation. Sometimes it's letting the code speak for itself. Over the next 30 days, Stratwell Capital paraded Fortress OS across media outlets, calling it the future of financial data protection. I worked behind the scenes, feeding findings through secure federal channels, watching the storm build. Mason sent updates through encrypted messages. First stress test, failed. Rains called it a calibration hiccup. 2 weeks in, I was presenting my findings to an FBI cybercrime task force when my phone buzzed again. Rachel Wong, NSA. Really, we're seeing abnormal traffic patterns, exactly like your models predicted. How fast can you get to DC? 6 hours. That night, I sat in a secure NSA facility, presenting to a room of grim-faced intelligence officials. I pulled up the last slide in my analysis and said plainly, Fortress OS doesn't just fail to stop certain types of threats, it invites them. Its architecture creates new vulnerabilities in every network it connects to. I let the silence hang. When they go live, every bank that plugs into it becomes a liability. If we don't intervene, we're not just looking at a breach, we're looking at a potential financial meltdown. And that's when they finally started to listen. Becomes a gateway for attackers, Rachel finished, scrolling through the live data feeds. It's essentially a backdoor into every bank that connects to the network. Exactly, I confirmed, watching the graphs update in real time. And based on these traffic patterns, someone's already found it. The briefing lasted for hours. By the end, multiple federal agencies were mobilizing. What we were looking at wasn't just a product flaw. It was the early warning of a coordinated cyber attack on the American financial system. A worst-case scenario unfolding in real time. That evening, my phone lit up with alerts. Stratwell Capital's stock had jumped 10%. The media was reporting that 5 major banking institutions had officially signed on to Fortress OS. Rains was quoted in the Wall Street Journal, proudly touting military-grade encryption and zero-compromise architecture. But Mason's encrypted message told a different story. Total chaos, testing environments failing basic audits. Rains blames legacy software conflicts. I didn't have time for headlines. I focused on finalizing my master analysis, now bolstered by NSA monitoring logs and FBI penetration test results. Within days, it became impossible to ignore. Fortress OS wasn't just vulnerable, it was practically designed to be exploited. 1 week before launch, the tipping point came. Multiple agencies submitted their findings. Penetration testing revealed the exact failure points I had warned about. The Federal Banking Commission suspended Stratwell's security certification indefinitely. The fallout was immediate. Stratwell's stock dropped 40% in a single day. Headlines shifted from celebration to crisis. Rains was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. And my phone? It didn't stop ringing for days. From Google, Apple, Raytheon, Deloitte, every major tech firm wanted to hire me. I turned them all down. Instead, I accepted a joint appointment with the NSA and FBI, heading a new cybersecurity initiative aimed at overhauling the standards used by financial institutions nationwide. The program was designed to do what Fortress OS never could, actually protect. The media called it a paradigm shift. Wire ran a feature. The Navarro Principle, how one guy stopped a financial catastrophe. Marcus joined my team, bringing every archived log we'd quietly collected over the years. They kept hoping it was just a config error, he said as we reviewed the data. Even when your models spelled out exactly how it would fall apart. The congressional hearings were as brutal as expected. I testified about the dangers of prioritizing image over integrity, marketing over resilience, and ego over engineering. Raines testified too, his previous arrogance replaced by remorse. During a break he approached me. And Navarro, we should have listened. I met his eyes. Yes, you should have. But how did you know? How did you spot what everyone else missed? I didn't hesitate, because I did what real security professionals are supposed to do. I looked for weaknesses, even in the things everyone said were unbreakable. The aftermath reshaped an industry. The Navarro Protocol, which mandated rigorous third-party testing, mandatory peer review, and structural redundancy for all financial platforms, became the new gold standard. Within months, banks around the globe adopted the framework. 1 year later, I stood in front of a packed auditorium at the Black Hat Cybersecurity Conference, preparing to deliver the keynote address. As I scanned the crowd, I spotted familiar faces. Marcus, now leading his own federal security task force. Rachel, who had championed my warnings when no one else did. Even Alan Langston, the former Stratwell CEO, sitting quietly in the back, humbled, and now a vocal advocate for reform. I stepped up to the podium and took a breath. In cybersecurity, I began, our greatest threats aren't the attackers we can see. They're the vulnerabilities we refuse to acknowledge. Sometimes they're technical, sometimes they're human, but they always come from the same place. Underestimating the complexity of what we're trying to protect. And I meant every word. Skills, yes, but more importantly, in the courage to speak up when something doesn't look right. Last week, I received a message from a senior executive at one of the banks that had nearly gone live with Fortress OS. Thank you for risking your career to prevent this. Your warning saved us from a catastrophe we didn't even know was coming. That message is pinned above my desk at the NSA, right next to the Presidential Medal for Cybersecurity Excellence. Not as some kind of victory trophy, but as a daily reminder of why we do this work. Being right isn't about proving someone else wrong. It's about preventing disaster, about standing firm when expertise clashes with ego, when truth threatens power. It's about speaking up when your gut and your data tell you that something isn't safe, even if no one wants to hear it. The students in my advanced cybersecurity course often ask if I was scared. Scared to challenge Stratwell Capital, scared to risk my future. I tell them the only thing we should truly fear in our field is silence. Because silence isn't just complicity, it's an open invitation to catastrophe. The lesson of the Fortress OS failure isn't that one tech guy was right and a corporation was wrong. It's that real security starts with humility, with the willingness to question even what's marketed as unbreakable. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about retaliation, it's about building a generation of cybersecurity professionals who know that courage matters just as much as code. That's not just a cybersecurity lesson. That's professional integrity. That's the true legacy of the Fortress OS incident. If my story struck a chord with you, if you've ever been the one voice in the room speaking up while others dismissed you, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below. Tell me about a time you stood your ground. Tell me where you are now and where you want to be. I wasn't supposed to be the one who changed anything. I was just the IT guy. But I kept showing up, kept documenting, kept raising the alarm. And when the world finally started listening, I was ready. If you believe in what I stood for, stand with me. Share this story, not because it makes me look good, but because someone out there needs the reminder that doing the right thing matters, even when it's the hard thing, especially when it's the hard thing. Here's my advice: don't let a title or a lack of one define your worth. I didn't have a C-suite badge, but I had data, facts, and conviction, and when those things aligned, I had enough. Whatever your field, tech, education, healthcare, business, integrity will always be your most valuable credential. Speak up when something feels wrong. Stand firm when others stay silent. Document everything. Protect yourself, yes, but never lose sight of why you started. Because sometimes the difference between disaster and prevention isn't a firewall or a password. It's one person who refuses to stay quiet. One person who sees the crack in the system and has the guts to say, "This isn't safe." Be that person. Be the one who looks beyond the press releases and asks the hard questions. That's how we build a safer, smarter future. One voice, one decision, one moment of courage at a time.